In the world of big business, they called him the patriarch and the last emperor of the auto industry. A man who refused to compromise and believed that perfection wasn't a goal, it was the bare minimum. He didn't just run a corporation, he rewrote the rules of the game, forcing the entire industry to follow the pace of his ambition. Ferdinand Piëch, entrepreneur, engineer, mastermind, and the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, the legendary founder of Porsche. From the very beginning, it was clear he was destined for anything but an ordinary life. Rising from the ranks of a regular engineer to the head of an automotive empire, Piëch became infamous for his iron will, ruthless standards, and a personality as intimidating as it was brilliant. In the 1990s, when Ferdinand Piëch stepped in as CEO of Volkswagen, the company was on the brink. The corporation was drowning in one of the worst crises in its history, bleeding money and losing ground fast. He was expected to do what every corporate leader does in times like that, cut costs by laying off factory workers. But Piëch played by his own rules. Instead of sacrificing the people on the assembly lines, he went after the executives. He cleaned house almost entirely at the top, removing anyone tied to the decisions and failures that had pushed Volkswagen into financial disaster. Every manager, every director responsible for the company's decline gone. Once the dead weight of incompetent leadership was stripped away, Piëch rebuilt the company with ruthless precision. And within just a few years, he dragged Volkswagen out of crisis and back into profitability. Long before those events, Ferdinand Piëch had already earned a reputation as a brilliant engine mastermind, the man behind the legendary Porsche 917, a machine that dominated the world of endurance racing. He was also one of the visionaries who brought the revolutionary Quattro all-wheel drive system to life, transforming Audi into a true premium powerhouse with cars like the Audi A8. And perhaps most famously, he was the driving force behind the creation of the most insane hypercar of the early 21st century, the Bugatti Veyron. In automotive history, Piëch stands among the absolute giants, a man whose authority was rarely questioned and whose influence reshaped the industry itself. But beyond the legendary supercars and corporate victories, there were other projects, bold, ambitious, and deeply personal. One of them was the Volkswagen Phaeton, an underrated masterpiece with one of the most complicated stories in automotive history. In the mid-1990s, Ferdinand Piëch set out to do something that, at first glance, seemed almost impossible. He wanted to invade the luxury segment and challenge giants like the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, BMW 7 Series, Audi A8, and Lexus LS. It was an enormous challenge, but with the vast resources of the already powerful Volkswagen Group, it was possible. Still, Piëch demanded the impossible. He handed his engineers 10 brutal requirements. One of them became legendary. The car had to cruise at 300 kilometers per hour all day long in plus 50 degrees Celsius heat while maintaining a perfect plus 22 degrees Celsius inside the cabin. And even at those speeds, the hood wasn't allowed to vibrate by a single millimeter. This wasn't just another car project, it was war. Volkswagen spared no expense, no shortcuts, no compromises. Piëch personally oversaw the entire development process, and his standards bordered. Even the design mock-up of the future car became the most expensive in Volkswagen history because he constantly rejected the work of the designers. One day, it was the air vents. Another day, the trim pieces. Then, something else entirely. Nothing satisfied him, and only after the prototype became fully functional, every button clickable, every switch operational, every detail perfected, did he finally say, "Now, it's perfect." For Piëch, that was the highest praise imaginable. The future flagship Volkswagen was designed to outperform its rivals in every possible way. Advanced mixed alloy construction, massive engine options reaching all the way up to 12 cylinders, all-wheel drive, air suspension, technology everywhere, luxury everywhere. To build it, Volkswagen gathered the brightest minds across the entire corporation, the company's most talented engineers and designers. The project was officially underway. At the same time, construction began in Dresden on one of the most unusual automotive factories ever created. The plant alone cost nearly 190 million euros. Rising almost in the center of the city was a massive structure made of glass and steel, complete with elevators, viewing platforms, panoramic windows, a monument by the time the factory was completed, and futuristic assembly systems. This wasn't meant to be just a factory. It was meant to be a monument. By the time the factory was completed, the car itself was finally ready. The world was introduced to a massive luxury sedan over 5 meters long, featuring an opulent interior and an extraordinary lineup of engines. The luxury Volkswagen lineup featured not only 6- and 8-cylinder engines, but also a diesel engine that was quite rare in its design. The 5-liter 10-cylinder diesel engine produced 313 horsepower with an almost unbelievable torque of 750 Newton-meters. But the crown jewel of the engine lineup was the unique W12. Please don't confuse it with a V12. It's specifically a W12. Here's how a V12 works, and here's how a W12 works. You'll agree there's a big difference. This type of engine, with cylinders arranged in a staggered pattern, was installed exclusively in vehicles from the Volkswagen Group. This engine was the pride of the company. The naturally aspirated 6-liter power plant produced 420 horsepower and 550 Newton-meters of torque. It took 6 seconds for the nearly 2.5-ton sedan to accelerate to 100 kilometers per hour. An impressive result, but speed was never the main point. Comfort was. The excellent engine was complemented by an all-wheel drive transmission and a must for an executive car, air suspension that could be adjusted not only for stiffness, but also for height. The list of standard features is simply endless. Leather, real wood, a multimedia system with a huge number of speakers throughout, and built-in solar panels, the energy from which allows the cabin to be cooled during the summer heat, for example, while the car waits for its owner in the parking lot. A ventilation system and back massage feature in all seats. The rear bench consists of 2 luxurious armchairs, along with a refrigerator, a phone, and a host of other optional features. The customer could choose any configuration, as there was no shortage of options. The new premium Volkswagen was named the Phaeton, and that name has its own story as well, a reference to the ancient Greek myth of Phaeton, the son of Helios, who attempted to drive the chariot of the sun but ultimately lost control. The car assembly process and the factory itself are just as fascinating as the car itself. This futuristic building is called the Glass Factory, and it's pure science fiction, since the factory is located right in the heart of Dresden. They decided to do away with the noisy and cumbersome trucks that used to deliver parts. Instead, a railway was specially built, along which quiet and eco-friendly trams delivered everything needed. Inside, parts were delivered to the assembly line via special automated carts. The assembly line itself was also unique, with a wooden floor. All the workers wore white coveralls. Pleasant music played. There was glass and beautiful stone everywhere, and it was as clean as an operating room. Even the noise in the assembly shop was minimal, thanks to specially designed assembly equipment. Everything was done to make the factory as comfortable as possible for both workers and visitors. Comfort was very important since the plant was not only an assembly facility, but also a museum. Anyone could take a tour of the assembly line for a fee. Inside the building, there is a luxurious restaurant, a bistro, and a Volkswagen brand clothing store. The factory was open to any visitor, but the main guests were, of course, the customers who had ordered a car for themselves. Each car was custom built. Prospective owners would visit the configuration room where they could choose everything: the car's color, alloy wheels, the type of leather and wood trim, their color and texture, the engine and the drivetrain, all according to the customer's preferences. No two cars were exactly alike. Each customer received personalized service. In 2002, the Volkswagen Phaeton hit the market and was immediately pitted against the Mercedes S-Class, BMW 7 Series, and Audi A8. The Phaeton went head-to-head with these luxury sedans. The BMW 7 Series and Audi A8 were sportier in terms of performance, and owners of these cars won't get bored even when they switch from the plush backseat to the driver's seat. But the Mercedes S-Class and the Phaeton, these cars are all about comfort. The Phaeton's air suspension gave it a remarkably smooth ride. Even the Mercedes wasn't always known for the best ride quality. In many comparative tests, the Phaeton has repeatedly outperformed individual competitors in terms of its overall positive qualities: interior finish, range of options, ride comfort, noise insulation, and performance. The Phaeton was never a pushover, and reviews from actual owners have confirmed the high quality of this Volkswagen luxury sedan. Maintenance is cheaper, comfort is top-notch, and reliability is no worse, and in some cases even better than that of the cars listed above. At service centers, every Phaeton customer was treated like royalty, like a god. A particularly big advantage was the Phaeton's price. It was much lower than that of its competitors. It offered the best value for money. Ferdinand could be proud of himself and his team of developers. The car turned out to be truly impressive. But there's always one important caveat. The Phaeton became the most luxurious and technologically advanced Volkswagen in the brand's history. It was the first executive-class vehicle in the company's more than 70-year history. It was bought by people who didn't want to flaunt their wealth, and the government purchased Phaetons for officials. Even the German chancellor drove a Phaeton and, according to rumors, was extremely pleased with the car. But all these facts led nowhere. Unfortunately, the Phaeton car met the same fate as the young Phaeton from the ancient Greek legend about the son of Helios, the sun god. According to the legend, no one believed the young Phaeton when he said his father was the sun god, so he went to his father and asked him to let him ride across the sky in his golden chariot. Helios did not want to give him the chariot and tried to dissuade Phaeton. The horses were treacherous and obeyed only their master, but Phaeton was adamant. Helios had no choice but to agree. His father told him to hold the horses firmly and not to stray from the beaten path. But as soon as the chariot soared into the sky, the horses sensed an inexperienced hand, bolted and veered off their familiar path. Phaeton was frightened and let go of the reins. Left uncontrolled, the horses plunged toward the earth. Flames from the sun chariot, which had descended close to the ground, engulfed the earth. A terrible conflagration broke out on the earth. But it crashed, and the Phaeton, like a shooting star, plunged lifelessly into the waters of the Oradan. Just like the Phaeton in the legend, the Phaeton car failed to assess its own capabilities and fell victim to stereotypes. It was extremely difficult for Volkswagen to convince people of the uniqueness of its product, and much to their disappointment, Phaeton sales left much to be desired. But the car had one problem no engineer could solve: the badge. Volkswagen had always been associated with affordable cars for ordinary people, and many buyers simply weren't ready to spend flagship luxury car money on a Volkswagen, no matter how exceptional the product actually was. When wealthy customers wanted to display status and success, they instinctively chose Mercedes or BMW. Volkswagen rarely even entered the conversation. Then there was the styling. Critics often mocked the Phaeton for looking too understated. Some called it an oversized Golf. Others joked it was a Passat on steroids. But that was exactly what Piëch wanted: anonymous luxury. A car for people who didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but still wanted the most technically advanced machine in the world. In the end, sales fell dramatically short of expectations. Over 15 years, Volkswagen sold only around 84,000 Phaetons worldwide. Volkswagen had planned to sell 20,000 Phaetons each year, but over the course of 15 years, only 84,000 cars were sold. That is, just 5,500 cars per year, a disaster for the company. The company reportedly spent more than $1.4 billion developing the project. For comparison, the legendary Lexus LS 400 cost Toyota roughly $1 billion to create, despite taking even longer to engineer. Losses amounted to more than 2 billion euros. On March 18, 2016, the last Phaeton rolled off the assembly line at the glass factory in Dresden, marking the end of its history. For Volkswagen, it was a painful disappointment. At the same time, Ferdinand Piëch himself had also left the company following internal conflicts with Volkswagen leadership, and so ended the story of one of Volkswagen's boldest and most ambitious creations, and the story of the man who transformed the company into a global automotive empire. The Phaeton disappeared, leaving behind the silence it had spent years engineering into its cabin. The era of limitless ambition gave way to an era of cold calculations. But for those who truly understand cars, the Phaeton will forever remain the last true masterpiece of the old school, built not for marketing, but for perfection.